3, 2, 1. Going live now. And hopefully we are live. Thank you very much to everybody who's been waiting for this video to start. Thank you for everybody who's joining us this evening. This evening is going to be a really interesting video where we're going to be discussing the new Dirac Live technology, Art Active Room Treatment. And I just want to give us maybe 30 or 40 seconds just to give some people time to join us in the video. And hopefully you can see to my right or maybe my left, depending on which way you're looking at the screen, is Nilo Ericsson. Oh, hello, Nilo.
Having some, trying to get my sound right.
Okay.
Good evening, Terry.
Hello. So, Nilo, I thought I'd ask you, you've been with Dirac since the beginning, haven't you? So,
exactly.
Obviously, I want to talk to you about art, but just to give people some time to join us, what has it been like as a company to actually start and work for all this time?
It's been an amazing journey. Starting struggling a lot with what we're going to do, what we're going to focus on. From 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 persons, and for many years we were below 10 people. Today we're more than 100, also spread out across different countries in the world. So we have offices. The headquarters is still in Uppsala, where we started. We have an R&D office in Copenhagen, and we have another R&D office in Bangalore in India. And we have sales and customer support in many countries around the world. So seeing that grow, it has never been a straight path. It's been ups and downs and left and right. So it's been a journey.
It's been an awesome achievement actually in terms of from where I sit from what I've seen. I think it's been an awesome achievement of where you are today. So hopefully that's given people time to sign into the video and come and join us this evening. And again, just to explain what we're here for, we're here to talk to you about the new Dirac technology, Art Active Room Treatment. And I've got obviously a big list of questions I'd like to ask you about the technology. What is it? Why do we need it? What does it do and how does it work? As you can imagine, all of the important things. And I'm hoping that the viewers will be asking questions as well. And to the viewers, if you've got any questions you'd like to ask Nilo, or maybe even myself about Dirac, especially the art, but anything Dirac Live related, make sure you leave your questions and we'll do a Q&A session towards the end of the video. And also, I just want to ask the people that are watching the video, I haven't done a live stream video in some time, so please keep us posted for the sound, how are we doing for sound levels and stuff like that, because it's very, very difficult to monitor everything as the video is live. So, Nilo, are you ready for us to kind of jump into things in detail?
Yes. So where do you want to start?
Well, I think we should start right at the beginning. So can you tell us, what is Art Active Room Treatment and why do we need it? Yeah,
it's a good question. Of course, a very basic one. And active room treatment is about getting rid of the room reverberation in the bass region. So people may use bass traps, huge bulky absorbers of bass frequencies, and they're not even effective down to the lowest frequencies where you may have lingering bass in a room, in a reverberant room. So what active room treatment does then is to use all the speakers you have and not only use them to play the sound, but also to play a cancelling and anti-sound to sort of cancel out the reflections so that you get rid of most of the reverberation in the low frequency. So it's very similar to how an active noise cancellation, like if you have headphones with active noise cancelling, they are playing sound in opposite phase to get rid of the unwanted sound so that you can hear what you want to hear. Same thing here.
So essentially, it sounds very, very simple in a sense. You've got reverberant sound within the room, and you're just creating really, I suppose, the opposite, the reverse of that. But I know for a fact it can't be that simple because you've got lots of speakers, lots of subwoofers within a multi-channel home theatre system. So, it must be extremely complex. So how does it work? And I suppose what is it doing? What is happening? What is, you know, what is happening behind the scenes maybe?
Yes. So to sort of set up the system, you need to do the same measurements that you would do with the Dirac Live room correction or Dirac Live base control. You don't have to do new measurements. You can use your previous measurements, and those will be used to calculate how all the speakers sort of interfere with one another, or how they can be used to interfere with one another in order to cancel out the reflection, so that what you hear when you are in the sweet spot and where you have taken the measurements is as clean a signal as possible from the speaker. So we're doing still the impulse response correction that is from Dirac Live room correction, and we're also doing the well, actually a bit more advanced bass management, but the bass management problem is also handled like with bass control. You get the more even bass reproduction in the area where you have done the measurements, but then with active treatment you're also taking care of the reflection. So that is possible because you're using all the speakers collaboratively. So for example, if you only have two speakers, you have left and right speaker, they will be playing their own sound, but the left speaker will also be cancelling out reflections and supporting the right speaker in doing what it should be doing, and vice versa. So the right speaker will help the left speaker by cancelling out reflections and filling in where there are, for example, bass nulls in the room.
So just coming back to just to explain the technology a little bit. So what's actually happening is the left speaker is reflecting off of the ceiling, the floor, the sidewalls, as is the right speaker, and there obviously can be cancellations and phasing issues and stuff going on. And active room treatment is designed to try and use the opposite speaker or the spare speaker or the free non-playing speaker, even though it is playing, to fix the issues. It's difficult to understand this technology. It's really hard. That's why I'm asking the questions. So
yeah,
it's
I don't know if you can show one of the pictures where it's the one Dirac off, and that's sort of illustrating the problem.
Sure. So I mean, obviously you can't see it, Nilo, unfortunately, the way that I've got things set up, but it's on the screen now, so you can see.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's on the screen, so you can see the.
So it shows like the side, the green sound coming from the right speaker. There's like a direct wave and a reflected wave, and when they both reach the listening area, you can just imagine that will be an undesirable situation where you have multiples of the same sound coming from different directions, and that would sort of garble the experience. So now if you switch it to the Dirac on, it's on, okay.
Yes.
Then you see that the other speakers in this setup, it's like the left speaker and there's I think a subwoofer illustrated there. They are collaborating to sort of kill that reflection. So this is just to illustrate the principle of how that works. So and the goal is to get the listening area as clean as possible.
So the alternative to this would be, as you mentioned before, it would be an acoustic treatment of sorts. But to have an effective acoustic treatment on a sidewall, for example, that was effective at very deep bass frequencies, it would need to be huge. It would need to be, I don't know, 10 feet, 12 feet thick or something like that, which is impractical in 99.999, and even then you might not be as effective. So
right. And this works very well down to 20 hertz. We're also looking further, deeper down than 20 hertz, but that's when the room starts. It changes the role of acoustically when you go deeper, because the room becomes small relatively to the wavelengths. So there's not much room correction you need to do down below 20 hertz, for example. But you still have the energy in that room. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I suppose the waves, the sound waves, must be huge. They are huge, aren't they? That's what they're below. Oh, they're huge.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So at 20 hertz, you have like 17 meters. I don't know what that is in English. Royal.
Big.
Yeah. So I mean it's big compared to the room, at least the normal room.
So can I ask? I don't expect you to explain the technology in too much detail, but how is this calculated? What is going on? I mean, I don't know how much you can tell us, but what. Yeah, I don't know what question to ask. It seems like black magic. So what's happening here?
Yeah, witchcraft. I've heard the word witchcraft from people that have received the demo. So we talk of a concept where we talk about main speakers and we talk about support speakers. All the speakers are equal. They're not any different speakers from one another, but they are playing in the active room treatment context. Is that the speaker that is sort of playing its sound, its dedicated channel, for example. That's the main speaker, and the other speakers will be support speakers for that main speaker, and the support speakers will be the ones that are playing the anti-sound, so to say, to cancel the reflections at their appropriate times and with the phase and the coloration that is needed to actually do that in a good way. So I mean, we're using the same measurements, as I said, and we have data. Then after having done the measurements, you have data of all the speakers in the room, in all the microphone positions that you have been going through. So you know, actually, in each of the microphone positions, you know how each speaker is contributing directly and also indirectly by the reflections, and early and late reflections are involved here. And what we're addressing with the active room treatment is actually the late reflections that cause the reverberation. So by reducing by canceling out the energy before it starts resonating, then you get rid of the reverberation, basically, and doing that by canceling the reflection at these deep frequencies, the bass frequencies, we're sort of removing the room from the equation, so to say. So a front speaker will play the bass, and the bass will sort of travel through the room unhindered, uninterfered with, because we have removed the most of the energy of the reflections in the bass area. And what we have discovered, maybe it wasn't intentional effect of active room treatment, but what we discovered is that even far outside of the area where we have been doing the measurements, like we do the measurements around the sofa, but even if you go like to a corner of the room or a kitchenette on the side of the room, you still have that effect. You still get the bass, and it's clean, because I suppose it's because we cancel out the reflections and the wave just propagates through the room.
That's really interesting, because obviously you think of the points of highest pressure for bass in a room being the corners and around the edges and maybe the back wall and the front wall, which is basically the edges of the room. So it's interesting, I suppose, that the cause of that could well be the reflections, or I suppose it is the reflections, isn't it? Really, as the sound reflects backwards to and from in the room. So if you're getting to that earlier, stopping it building up, then that makes sense why that would be the case. It's interesting, really interesting. This technology in the sense, because I've done a lot of calibrations, as you know. I've also done a lot of work with acoustics and acoustic treatment, and it is hard. Bass is the hardest part to get right. It's really difficult, and especially when you're pushing high bass SPLs at lower frequencies, really low frequencies, to keep that nice and tight is really difficult. And I've always wondered, is it what's the bottleneck of the system? Is it maybe the speakers and subwoofers? I didn't think so, but is it them, or is it just the fact the rooms are not big enough? Maybe it's just because it's basically been very reverberant in rooms, and it would be interesting to hear this technology for myself and to hear the difference. What's it like without the reverberation? That's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, it is, and you cannot. I mean, getting rid of the room, like physically, means you get rid of the walls, but then you don't have the support from the walls that sort of increases the energy in the bass, even in the direct wave, for example. It's like a huge baffle, for example, when you get support from the walls, and so physically getting rid of the walls is not a solution to this problem of reverberation, because you will lose a lot of energy from the speakers. So I think this is like we struck a very good spot on what is needed, sort of next, to improve the listening experience. So this is a feature that we're adding on top of the room correction and bass control feature. So you can add active room treatment on top of that to get rid of the late reverberations.
Well, that was going to be my next question, really, and I think you've answered it already, but I'm going to ask the same question again, just so we can maybe explain it again to be clear. What is the difference between ART and normal Dirac Live, and what is the difference between ART and bass control?
Yeah, good question. So if we start with the normal Dirac Live, that's, as you know, it's impulse response correction using mixed phase filters. So it means that we're correcting not only the magnitude of it's not just an EQ, it's actually working in the time domain as well. So getting all the energy at the different frequencies aligned with each other, so that the sound reaches you transparently, basically. So as you would hear it naturally. So it's been recorded. The recording equipment is usually not a problem. The problem is the weakest link is usually the speakers and the room. After passing through the speakers and the room, you will not get that transparent experience unless you correct the impulse response, like we do with Dirac Live room correction. So Can
I just quickly ask you a question on impulse response, just to explain it to people? So impulse response is something that I don't think people look at too much within Dirac Live, because it's something that you can't adjust and can't change. But when you actually do look at the impulse response and what it's done, it's huge, actually. The improvement it makes to the graph is absolutely massive. So my understanding of impulse response, it's the kind of the speed behavior of the speaker, if that makes sense. How quickly all the drivers are starting, and then essentially I suppose it is stopping. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Just to explain it to people.
Starting and stopping, exactly. Right. So we don't want them to sort of pre-ring. We don't want it to post-ring. We want the sound energy to be delivered when it should be delivered, and not let a woofer trail behind or so on.
And they often do, don't they? They often do, because you've got the physical size difference between a woofer and a mid-range and a tweeter, for example. The physical size means that the speed is different, isn't it? The behaviour can be different, and obviously a better speaker will have a better impulse response, you would expect. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's correct. A carefully designed speaker would take that into account, of course.
Okay, so Dirac Live obviously is improving, and massively improving, actually, the impulse response, which is why I think you get improved clarity, improved organisation of sound, and improved clarity from Dirac Live. And obviously the ability to manage the sound tonality wise and otherwise, but it's the clarity, I think, is the bit that impresses people the most as an instant hit.
The clarity, the transparency, and I think another of the more valuable benefits of this is that by restoring the impulse response, you get this imaging clarity as well. So you get a more a higher resolution of the sound image between the left and right speakers, so you can position the instruments better, also in the sort of in the depth. So it helps a lot in that sense. And if you want to compare that to what active room treatment is doing, so the Dirac Live Impulse Response Correction, each speaker is sort of working for itself, so cleaning up its own mess by applying a filter to each single speaker. Whereas with active room treatment, all the speakers are allowed to chime in and help a speaker to play its sound. So all the speakers are actually getting all the channels. So I mean, imagine a home cinema, for example, where you have a multi-channel content playing. So even the right front speaker will get LFE, low frequency effect content, or left surround content in the bass region to make sure to help the surround of the subwoofer to clean up the reverberation issues, the reflection issues. So that's the main difference between these two technology-wise.
So my understanding again, so Dirac Live is focusing on the individual speakers.
Correct.
But whereas Art is focused on the overall whole picture of sound.
Correct.
Yeah, there's better ways to describe that, but that's where I'm at the moment. So let's step back a second, Nilo, to bass control then. So where is bass control different to both Dirac Live and to Art?
Yeah, so bass control allows you to integrate subwoofers, one or several subwoofers. I don't think there is a limit. I mean, the device sets a limit of the number of subwoofers. So it does both bass management and subwoofer integration. So to begin with, on the subwoofer integration side, that's where this really stands out. Bass control stands out. If you have one subwoofer in your room, you will get a certain response. You can apply Dirac Live room correction, impulse response correction to that, and you will get a nice flat target on average. But if you look at the individual microphone positions and how they measure, you can see that there will be, at some frequencies, there will be huge variations because you have the room effect, where at one seat you have basically no bass at 40 hertz, for example, and another seat you have lots of bass. But on average, it's flat after using Dirac Live room correction. So what bass control is adding is the ability to tweak the phase of the bass on that problematic frequency. So bass control, if you're adding also several subwoofers, you will see that you get a nicer, more even response also among in different positions, but you will still have like the room mode problems, and those are the ones that Dirac Live bass control addresses by applying this very target specific all pass filter to those problematic frequencies. So an all pass filter is a filter that doesn't change the gain. It's not an EQ that gives you more or less gain at a certain frequency. An all pass filter will give you a phase adjustment on that frequency. So you can say you can delay the phase of one speaker at 40 hertz, but leave the rest sort of untouched.
So again, just to break this down, so Dirac Live, my understanding is it's focusing on the individual speakers and the overall picture to some degree. Bass control is focusing on targeting specific phase problems that you might have within subwoofers and within the bass region. And then Art active room treatment is engaging all of your speakers to solve all of the reverberation types of issues that then cause other problems within the room. Bass builds up, lingering bass, that which would be boomy bass or thick bass, or just bass that necessarily isn't quite as tight and as tuneful as it should be.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's basically ticking box. It's like a box, not necessarily a box ticking situation, but you make that improvement here, make this improvement here, and then the final is make the big one. Really, by the sounds of it, in terms of art, in terms of actively taking away some major issues that are inevitable with systems.
And maybe to the stereo community, art may be more acceptable or appetizing than bass control. Not everybody would use subwoofers maybe, so bass control is dedicated to handling the subwoofer integration problem. But if you don't have subwoofers, then there's no point of having bass control. Then you could look at active room treatment instead, where you can very well have a stereo system only, full range speakers, and they are supporting each other.
Well, that was going to be my next question, really, because initially when you look at a technology like this, you think the more speakers that you have and more subwoofers that you have, the better it's going to be. So my initial question was, do we need to have a multi-channel system, or can we still use this with a stereo system, which you've kind of just answered? And,
Sorry,
no problem, of course. And is there any, I suppose that then takes away the next question would be, is there like a minimum number of speakers that you need? Well, obviously you're going to need 2, aren't you? Because stereo sound, right? So, but how do I rephrase that question then? So, let's maybe focus quickly on stereo. So, if you just had stereo speakers, how would this work?
Yeah. So, as I explained, the left speaker would support the right speaker and vice versa. You would, if you measure, for example, after having applied Dirac Live room correction, and then you take Room EQ Wizard RAW, and make another measurement, just one more measurement, just to see how was the result actually by an objective third-party measurement tool. You may see that there are still some, null-ish behavior in the bass region. But I've seen this myself. Applying active room treatment then on these 2 speakers, you get perfectly flat response in the bass region. So really getting rid of the null type of behavior.
You know what? That's really interesting, because I always thought when you measured with Rue, it was because you was only measuring one specific point in space, like that inch around the microphone, for example, rather than like an average of multiple points measured. So it's interesting that it's purely because of, I assume, phase issues and bass room behaviour, if that makes sense, the reflectivity of it within the room. That's really interesting. So while we're talking about speakers then and hardware, I suppose what type of hardware are we going to need in order to have art added to a system? So are we going to need, are we going to need a multi-channel product, or which, obviously not? We just answered that question. So let me rephrase this. So technically it's just speakers, right? But do the speakers need to be full range speakers, or what range is art working in? Maybe that's a better question.
Yeah, we can start there. So at the moment we have limited art to work below 150 hertz. And there's many reasons to be careful in the beginning. In automotive, for example, we can use active room treatment, or not active room treatment, we call it something else in automotive. It's actually a technology we've been using for years already in cars. Because in a car, you're seated where you're seated, and the speakers are stuck where they are. So it's a more robust environment. So there we can have a higher frequency where you can trust the measurements to be valid, to be more valid at higher frequencies. But we chose to limit it to 150 to begin with. So that's the frequency area where that works. And if you then look at what the speakers need to support, so the speakers will excite the frequencies that they can play. So having that in mind, your speakers will be well fit to correct their own the mess they're causing in terms of reverberation energy in the room. So if the speakers are playing below 150, which they usually are, then you may have use of active room treatment to handle that reverberation.
That's really interesting, because you might think that, oh wow, for this to work, I'm going to need all full range big tower speakers or something. But what you've just explained there makes perfect sense. If the speakers can create the sound, they can create the problem that of that sound, and therefore they can be used to fix the problem that they're creating. So that makes obviously perfect sense. So let me rephrase the question I asked you before. So a minimum number of speakers would be 2. How many speakers as a maximum is the technology able to support?
So we have a launch partner for this. So we announced that at CES, and that's Storm Audio, and they make processor devices. I mean, they're fantastic machines with 32 channels. So they will be able to do active room treatment in all these 32 channels. 32 and that's a huge system.
Yeah, that's a huge system. Wow, that's what I'm sitting there thinking. Wow, it's huge. So
so you will have like subwoofers. You will have all the front speakers, surround speakers, and you will have the height speakers as well in the ceiling or in the walls or on floor standing. All types of speakers connected to that, and they can all contribute.
So let me ask you a little bit about the calibration process. So how much of the process will be automated, and how much will I be able to play with?
Great question. Dirac live room correction it has some customization. One of the customization parts is the target curve that you can play around with. That is still valid for active room treatment as well. It's the same principle. You have the same target curve handles. You have the advanced options where you can actually do very detailed adjustments of the target curve. Let me see. Then with active room treatment, there is another set of parameters that you can use to adjust how active room treatment behaves. And those parameters control the bandwidth, like the frequency band where each speaker is allowed to support other speakers. So there will be like sliders in the frequency response plot that tells that the front speaker may go down to 20 hertz and up to 150 hertz. The surround speakers can only go down to 80 hertz and up to 150 and so on. So these kind of customizations will be available in active room treatment. And of course, you can also, if you want to, for some reason, exclude some speakers from being controlled, so to say, by this.
So there is that extra element of what I call like tweakability and play with ability to, just to fine tune things as per the situation might demand, or.
Yeah. So similar to how we're playing with the bass control. So bass control adds another sort of dimension to it, like you can choose a crossover frequency, for example. Then with active room treatment, you have another set of sliders to control how active room treatment behaves. And talking of crossover frequency, in active room treatment, you don't need to talk about crossovers anymore, because all the speakers will play as much as they can in the whole frequency region where they can play, and they will overlap. So there will be there won't be a full range speaker that has a high pass to cross over to the subwoofer. They can overlap freely, so to say. So they can play on their natural, with the natural roll-off that they have been built for, and support each other where they overlap.
Yeah, this is something that came up in a conversation we had the other day, and I was interested by that because it's so different. That's so different to how I've been used to working with home cinema systems, if that makes sense. You normally have to make a decision. You make a decision of, I'm crossing over 80 hertz, for example.
Yeah.
I really like 80 hertz. It's such a nice frequency to cross over. And that going away, that whole decision process going away, it's going to take some getting used to. I said that to you, didn't I? It's going to take a lot of audio files and video files, some getting used to the sense of that.
And I've been demoing this a lot now since we launched it. Many knowledgeable, experienced people, they look at me like, what do you mean? And then they start thinking, oh, okay, yeah, sounds interesting. So it's gonna take a bit of getting used to.
Yeah, but to be fair, it's been the same forever, and sometimes you need to make, to take things forward, something needs to change, doesn't it? So it's interesting that this bit, that's the bit. I never thought that would be the bit that changes, but it's interesting that bit is changing. You mentioned Storm Audio, and you mentioned I can't remember the show. Sorry, but you mentioned the launch. You launched.
Yeah, it's a Consumer Electronics Show, CS,
that's
in Las
CS,
Vegas
sorry.
in January. Yeah, and
So I was just going to say, am I right in thinking that there's an exclusivity agreement with Storm Audio for arts for a period of time? Is that correct?
Correct. So Storm have exclusivity on having products on the market with active treatment until end of September, and as of 1st of October there can be others with art products on the market.
So from the 1st of October.
Yeah.
So I know the question. I mean, I haven't been able to check the chat because I've been listening to you. We've been concentrating on the conversation, but I suppose the next question is going to be, who's going to get it next? What? How do I answer that question in a better way?
Well, we can't say that unless we have the blessing of who's going to be next.
Okay.
So it's really up to the OEMs, the manufacturers that take this in to say when they want to talk about it.
Okay. So technically, as of October this year, which is only six or so months away, there potentially is a rollout beyond Storm.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting because obviously Storm, I mean, I haven't actually played with one myself, but that's a very premium product, and there's a lot of audiophiles that have got really nice systems where that's just a step too far financially. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of people interested in the date when they might be able to get access to this technology. And I suppose that the next question would be the license agreement for this, and how do people buy a license? How would that work, please?
Yeah, so that also will depend on the device manufacturer. So some device manufacturer may actually choose to sort of pay us, and the license is included with the device. So that's what Storm has done. They pay us for the license, and buyers of devices as of 1st of January this year, they get it like for free. I mean, it's not for free, but
it's included.
It's not licensed to us. Yes, it's included.
Yeah, sure,
exactly.
Sure.
Whereas older devices, legacy devices from last year and on backwards, they pay us a license fee of $299 US.
So just to explain it then, so if you owned a Storm product that was bought before January of this year, you would need to go and purchase a license to add arts, but that license is only $299.
Yeah.
So it's not really an expensive. We spoke about this price the other day. It's not expensive in the realms of high end audio. I think it's massively reasonable in terms of a cost. I don't say that on that. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
That's what I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that is pretty much all the questions I had planned. I'm just going to quickly look through the questions that the people in the chat have asked. So, Nilo, is there anything else you can think of while I quickly flick through these questions?
No, it's been very well received. So, as I said, I'm making many demos, and it works flawlessly, and it's also very flexible. I mean, you can use it on any system, from 2 speakers up to whatever number of speakers. So it's not requiring any specific type of installation or arrangement of the speakers or anything like that. It's all measurement based, as everything that we do.
Well, I think that's one of the interesting things that you started with, in the sense that you're going to add this technology with the existing measurements. There's no need to do a whole new set of measurements or a whole new set of measurement strategy. All the information's already there in the measurements that you're taking. It's just using that data to facilitate these technologies. So that I thought was really interesting. Okay, so looking at some of the questions we've got, just trying to pick out the most relevant ones, really. So this is just a microphone related question. I'm just going to go through them in order. So where are we? So Rohit Devraj has asked, is the UMIC 1 sufficient to capture what we need to capture in order for art to work?
Yes, it is. It's more than enough. Considering we only we only use the data basically up to 150 hertz or a bit beyond that at the moment, it's definitely sufficient.
And there's a second part of his question, which will Dirac art be compatible with mini DSP products? But we've kind of answered that already, because it's going to be dependent on the manufacturers, really, isn't it, rather than technology limitations. Right, so there was another question just regards to, will multiple subwoofers be required?
It's an option you can have. So if you have a stereo amplifier with the subwoofer outputs, you can certainly use active treatment with that. But it's an option. As we said, you can use it with only 2 speakers as well. 2 full range speakers support each other. But yeah, adding more speakers will add more benefit.
More potential to solve problems, isn't it, really, which is interesting.
Yeah. and the reason you add subwoofers is you want more bass, right? Nobody complains about too much bass, or?
Well, I tell you what, too much bass is a thing, but when the bass is poor quality. When the bass is really good quality, you can't have too much. It's impossible to have too much. That's really interesting. But it's also very, very difficult to have a lot sometimes, because it becomes too much pressure for the room, for the reasons that we've just spoken about, the reverberation of it. So you always seem to have a maximum capability. I can't go any more than this, because I start to hear errors and problems. So this is the limit. So if that limit goes away, maybe we can go even more crazy. That's fun. The fun for
bananas.
So Jeff Guthrie's got a question which is not really related to art. I think he's just having some issues using Dirac Live on an NADM 33. So I would say if you're having issues with it, it's probably just because you're using it wrong. And that is why I have a calibration service to try and help people and to try and show people the right way. So I would suggest maybe contact me on email or go into diraclivecalibration.com, which is my website for that. You can see some of the work that I do there, Jeff. I think that would probably be easier than trying to ask that question here.
Yeah, there's also Dirac has a help desk site with FAQs, and if you have, you can also submit questions there. But we're not doing calibrations for you.
Yeah, that's my job. So, Mr. Lindy has asked a really interesting question here. Can you set the intensity? Say you enjoy a little more room gain and decay. Is that aspect customizable? The amount of how do I even answer that?
It's a very, very good question. No, at the moment it's not customizable. The only customizations we have is all those sliders I mentioned. So the frequency region where each speaker is contributing. But it's a really interesting concept to have. Like we've been thinking about this in the past, and we called it a focus control, so to say. So you can go from like all wet. I mean, no management of the reverberation, and really tighten it up if you in a continuous way, so to say. But it's not something we have at the moment.
No, it's interesting because I would say that normally based on the audible result you would get with a system like this would be dictated how much you would push the bass and how much you might turn the bass up, or how much that would be my, because I think the decay that's been mentioned here is sometimes just the pressure, isn't it? The pressure that's in the room and the pressure that you feel. Well, if the base is really, really, really tight, then you can push the output more.
Yeah.
And then you'll have the equivalent of the same pressure feeling, but with a much tighter end result. That's the bit that excites me the most, obviously, about this.
Yeah.
So I hope that's answered that question, actually.
Yeah, and again, it's a good question. It's a very valid feature request, I would say, but maybe
This
not first launch.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah. So this is an interesting question here. So somebody's mentioned about getting a decrease in volume when using Dirac Live. So they're talking about headroom. So does Dirac Live adjust the system's volume, and does it build in any level of headroom into its calculations?
Yes, I think I'm maybe not exactly right, but I think it's about 10 dB that we sort of reserve for calculation headroom, because when the signal is not processed, then you can use the full sort of digital domain dynamics. But once you start making calculations, it could be a low-pass filter only, or an EQ, or an impulse response correction, or an active room treatment filter. That's when you start playing around with the dynamics a bit. So in order to not saturate and go outside the boundaries where the digital domain, the boundaries that the digital domain sets, we apply a bit of headroom to accommodate that additional variation that may be the result of doing all this processing. Yeah. So that can be perceived as a reduced level, and what we try to do then is, or recommend to do, is to have the Dirac off option as well reduced to be perceived as equal.
Yeah, I think that's in the software version. Is it? I don't think that's in some of the hardware versions.
No,
Nilo. So I don't think that's built
it's not a requirement for the hardware, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, within hardware, you've got access to levels anyway. So you've got your own compensation, system going on. It's only when it's maybe software only that you would maybe need that. So this is a really interesting question. So. Will art be the same? This is from Mike Amend. Sorry. Will art be the same on all platforms, or will higher-end products like the Storm, for example, be able to do more?
Good question again. At the moment, as we had applied this limitation of 150 hertz, we don't see that being a problem to accommodate on most platforms out there. But when channel counts increase, or of course you can run into some limits where the footprint just becomes too big, and then it may be necessary to either reduce a bit of the requirements, or the OEM would need to increase the cost, the bill of materials, adding another DSP or whatever, or more memory. So at the moment we don't see that, but we cannot say never. It may happen.
Yeah, because I saw this as very new technology, and I did wonder whether this would be incorporated. I don't know if the word's better, because we obviously haven't seen it in the real world yet. But I wondered over time whether, as new technologies are developed, whether better processing chips in a year, or in 2 years, or in 5 years' time would give better results for solutions like this, which are they must be very processor intensive, I'm assuming. How much processor power do we need? What is actually happening?
Yeah, so we get that question a lot from manufacturers, and what we usually answer is that this adds like 20% more processing than having Dirac Live room correction with base control. So it's another bit. Some may need to upgrade the hardware. Some may have to rethink how it's implemented. It's a bit up on the sort of processing cost. Yeah. But it's also much more powerful processing that's going on and doing so much more.
Yeah, well, I think that's more than understandable in the sense of what you're trying to achieve, and therefore accepting that there might be a need for more power to facilitate this, because this is really advanced stuff. So this is a really interesting question, because I think this is exactly what art is doing. So this is from Tino Gorach. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Will Dirac art help combating the SBIR effect?
SBAR.
Yes, I think that's speaker boundary interaction. I think I've got that correct, or speaker boundary interference response, which is where I think, yeah.
Is it like an early diffraction from the speaker cabinet?
Yeah, no, I think it's where you get as the speaker creates sound, it goes and hits the front wall and comes back out of phase, and you get cancellation. It's exactly what art is doing, isn't it?
So you have a reflection from the wall behind the speaker.
That's my understanding of the term. Yes, what people are referring to. So often you see like a cancellation in the 100 to 200 hertz region, for example. But I thought that was the floor. But it doesn't matter. You know, it's a reflection and then a phase cancellation causing a bass null.
It might if it's in that frequency region where art is working, and that depends on the distance. So it might definitely do that. So you could have the left and right speakers filling in for each other to combat that particular problem.
Yeah, that's potentially.
But now
huge.
I'm just speculating. I think it would be the effect.
Yeah, good point, because that's potentially huge, because there is often 100 hertz problem. So that's in the range, isn't it? That's in there. So that would help. So that's another really good question. Let me just quickly flick through, see if I can see anything else. So yeah, this is from Daniel Loshak, like a calibration workflow question. So ideally, we would need to run Dirac live and then activate art after. I assume that's what we would do, Nilo, is run Dirac live, adjust their target curves, and then hit the go button for art. Is that roughly how it would work?
Yeah, yes. You could describe it like that, yes.
Okay. Just flicking back through to see if there's anything I've missed.
So,
have I missed any questions?
Today,
do what, sorry?
No, I was just going to explain how the way the UI looks today. It's like you have the options like base control is already available. So you have the base control, base management, Dirac Live room correction, base management, and base control buttons to activate the technology. And then we just add another for active room treatment. And when you hit that button, the sliders I explained to you will appear as well.
Yeah, so it'd be like a stage on in the workflow, which makes sense in a similar way base control is now. You activate it and then it gives you the controls. That makes sense.
But you can go directly to active room treatment if I mean you don't have to decide, you don't have to do the room correction and base control and then active. You can go directly to active room treatment and you get it all done.
Get it all done for you. Interesting. Yeah. So there's a really interesting question here from Ben Patana. He asks, are there any downsides or negatives to using art?
I haven't seen any so far. If you think about what it's doing in the base, where instead of having crossovers, speakers are allowed to overlap. So it means that based on the measurements, we know how much they can overlap and how much they can support each other. That means that the excursion of each speaker can be lower. So you would get less sort of non-linear distortion from, I don't know, when you're playing loud, you get less issues of speaker membranes doing large excursion, because they're cooperating, they're all pushing energy, supporting each other, and they do less, basically. Each speaker does less.
You know what, that's so interesting, because your thought process automatically thinks each speaker will be doing more, because it's also doing the cancellation side of things as well. But actually it makes sense that it's doing less, because normally you're trying to overcompensate a little bit for the bits that are missing. That's really interesting.
So you can actually play softer at a lower volume, because you don't have to overcome the room issues. by increasing the volume. And I mean, you increase the volume, you bring up the room issues as well.
Yeah, it's always like a double-edged sword, isn't it? Really, you're chasing it, but at the same time, you're making the situation worse. Yeah, of course, that's an interesting one. So there's just an interesting question come in. Oh, sorry, I don't understand it. 1 second, please make it a hardware. Sorry, so there's a question from Sammy 10,001. I think it's not really the sort of question I can really ask. I'm sorry about that. It's just I thought that was going to be an interesting one, but it's kind of requesting hardware from Dirac. Dirac is a software company, isn't it, Nilo? So maybe it's worth asking that question. So Dirac is a software company, isn't it, really?
Yes, correct. So we have a software processor as well. We call it the room correction suite. So you can also download and use a processing app on a PC or a Mac to have the processing done. It's convenient if you're using the PC or home theater PC or something like that as the source with I don't know, playing your lossless audio service, music service, and can pipe it through the direct processing on the PC or Mac itself.
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, that is how I started using Dirac Live initially years ago with the software version. That was the hook for me. Very much hasn't come out since, Nilo. So right, so there's an interesting question here from Board Silly, and he's basically asked, will work with PMC transmission line speakers? But really, I think the better question would be, is this going to work with all speakers and all subwoofers? I assume so.
Yeah, I assume so too. We don't make a difference on. We don't even ask what speakers you have. So I think it's up to the measurements and see if we can fix the problem using the speakers.
So it's not like exclusive to certain speakers. It's not just cinema speakers. It's not. It should be any speakers that create sound, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a question's come in, and Paul, this question, Paul Rivera, this question has kind of been asked. Really, he's asking about Sound United. Will Sound United implement this, and will their hardware be capable? And we kind of spoke about this before, in the sense that the technology will start to come out later this year, and then it's going to be down to the manufacturers, isn't it, really, to decide to include it or not. So, really, what you want to do is email them and ask them for it. Really, that's probably the best solution. Would you agree with that, Nilo?
Yeah, give them a hard time not to.
Means there's a couple more questions coming in, but I've kind of gone through everything. If anybody's got any they want to quickly ask, please do so now, because I'm just conscious this is probably getting on for an hour or so. So I've took up a lot of your time, Nilo. So I appreciate that.
No worries.
Well, look, I just want to say thank you very much for coming on the live stream with me and going through all this. I mean, it's really interesting technology, of course. Until it's out in the wild, at the moment there's a lot of speculation around it because, not even I've played with it. So it's going to be interesting to get hold of this and see what it does and experience it. So maybe we can just finish there. Tell us about is it CES? Tell us what happened there, because you won about 5 awards or something, didn't you?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I have one of them here. Accidentally, I brought it home. So this is from Residential Systems. I'm going to give it back to the office. So we had a demo at the Venetian, one of the big suites they have there. Huge room. Quite good for sound, for playback, because it was a bit irregular. So you had different height of the ceiling, you have different depth of the room, different width, and so on. So there was no obvious shoebox issues there, and quite big room. And we were doing the demo together with Storm Audio, obviously, which is our launch partner, and with Per speakers. So that's really a speaker brand to look into. And I was a bit worried because we're doing what we're doing is about getting control of the room, not so much about dealing with the speakers. And the speakers, the per-listen speakers, are already they have sort of an array, a beamforming kind of character to avoid reflections from the ceiling and the floor. So I was a bit like, maybe they're too good to hear the difference. But yeah, they were really great. But I mean, the room still is the weak link here. And we were giving demos morning to evening, one after the other, and both with the stereo content, obviously, where the left and front speakers were the main speakers and the others were supporting, and we were doing A/B comparison with and without, and actually also listening to what this other support speakers are doing. So we muted the left and right speakers and only listened to the correction signal from the others, and that was really eye-opening for the people that were attending the demos, so to hear the room in opposite phase, so to say. Yeah, so very well received. We got 3 awards right there. Residential System, ABS Forum, and Sound and Vision, I think. Yes, Sound and Vision. And then after, we were mentioned by Audio Express and some other, I can't remember. So yeah, it was successful, definitely.
What's really interesting about that is that people actually got to experience it, which is the big thing, because at the moment, as I say, there's a lot of talk about it because it's very new to a very new technology. So the people that have actually heard it and experienced it properly, even with a really good speaker system, which, like as you said, you'd think it would be, we wouldn't need any of this because it's so good. The room's always the problem. So. Yeah, that's really interesting. So there's been a couple more questions coming, Nilo, and one of them is, I think you pretty much answered this anyway, but someone's accusing me of ignoring them. Sorry, Valti, I'm not ignoring anybody, but I think you kind of answered this anyway. So the question is about room mode related distortions, and that's exactly what Art is looking to fix, isn't it, within the bass?
Yeah, exactly. So making sure that we have speakers at different locations that have sort of different access to the room mode pattern, so they can address that. We had at the latest demos we made at the IAC, Integrated Systems Europe in Barcelona, just a couple of weeks ago. We were in a shoebox-like listening room with concrete walls, and there was a very, very obvious, by the book, null in the middle of the room at 35 hertz, and that was completely gone after applying room correction. First we tried to move the subwoofers around and see if we could get rid of it, but it didn't help. So then we applied the algorithm, did the measurements, applied the algorithm, and gone.
Problem gone.
Yeah.
I'm excited by this, Nilo. I really am, because there's certain things as a calibrator like me, I take so much time to try and fix everything, but sometimes you can't fix everything. Sometimes you have to just say that this can't be perfect. There's no way this is going to be perfect. We just try and get as close to perfect as we can. So are you saying that perfect bass is now going to be achievable? What a great question.
Yeah.
Great answer. Fantastic answer. Fantastic
I don't know what
answer.
to say.
No, that's all you need to say, Nilo. That's all you need to say. Now, obviously, I'm really excited by this. So thank you to everybody who's tuned in. Obviously, just one quick question.
Thank you.
I thought it was available now. So somebody just asked, when will Art be available for the Storms? I thought it was now. Is it not now, Nilo?
So there will be a firmware update where this becomes available, and I don't know the exact date, but it's spring 2023. So if you hit summer and it has not been released yet, then you need to start calling Storm Audio and asking what's going on.
Gotcha. So technically it's coming within the next couple of months in theory. Gotcha. So hopefully that's answered as many questions as we can for people. Nilo, thank you very much for coming on the live stream with me. I really appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to getting to experience this for myself. And what I'd love to be able to get to experience is what you just said, the on-off bit, if that makes sense, where the main sound is muted and you just hear the corrected sound. That would be really fantastic.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can do that at some point. But Nilo, thanks very much again, and thank you to everybody at home for tuning in. And yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Of course you have. Nilo, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.